now that we're both old as shit, mate. You need glasses, I need a friggin' salad. There's so many things gone wrong. What happened? We used to be contenders, Ron.
Yeah, at least still can play. I still try to play. It hurts more. Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Supernatural Strength Channel, we are deep inside with legend Ron Bath. It's only taken about 3 or 4 months to get... Hey, mate, people think I'm kidding. How many attempts have we had at this?
I actually looked at our first email about talking about this. It was back in April. And either you canceled, I canceled. I couldn't get on Skype for various reasons. We just got missing for 3+ months.
I had a storm on one evening. Then the friggin' Wi-Fi wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Even tonight, we've got it's blowing a hooligan and raining like hell outside, but hot. It's like, you can tell the storm coming. It's a hot one. How's life, Ron Bath?
Life's great. I mean, it's hot as hell down here, too. I mean, we're in the upper 90s, a lot of humidity, but life for me is good. It's been a year of a lot of changes. Well, there's been changes coming on and personal, which we won't go into. Arm wrestling, I have the ups and downs. Lately, I've been on the ups, except for this damn thing called COVID shutting the world.
How bad's the effect where you are, mate? Is it very serious there or not too bad?
Me personally, nothing. I don't see a whole lot of anything because I live pretty much by myself. I work with a small crew. And I knew what, isolation, social distancing was before it was even invented. That was me. If it wasn't for going to an arm wrestling tournament, I didn't know. But, they say Georgia's, been rising, but I haven't really I don't keep up on it too much because, you hear so many different sides, it just beats you up if you pay too much attention. So I watch what I do and I haven't seen a whole lot.
Well, probably one of the nearest towns to where we're based, only sort of 20 minutes away from 25 minutes away from where I am, is the highest level in the UK at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's not great, it sucks, but, like you say, just trying to keep your head down best we can, but at the end of the day, mate, it is what it is. It's cancelled arm wrestling as we know it this year. World Arm Wrestling League season completely cancelled. World Championships, both W.A.F. and IFA, both cancelled. Yep. The top 8 cancelled. But it looks like you managed to get out to a competition. I saw you choking out some dude.
A picture could say 1,000 words. Actually, I saved his life, so we're not going to say I was choking his ass out. Yeah, actually, I've been to 2 different competitions over the last couple of months. I live by the skin of my teeth, so I hope nobody shows up sick. But, I've been to 2 competitions, and there's never been a complaint about anybody getting sick afterwards. So.
Yeah, well, that's good. What was the event that you attended the other day? I saw you pulling both right and left, and you looked like you were pretty solid on both.
Yeah, that was, it was out in Hawthorne, Nevada. It's, for charity for this Bostic, a military guy. They usually run in May during their military days.
Yep.
But it got postponed several times, and, I originally was supposed to have a super match, and I forget who the guy was, but he's from overseas. He lives with Vazan and those guys, but he had to go overseas back home because his mom was ill. This was before the COVID outbreak, and he just hasn't been able to get back. Yeah. So that got canceled, and so I just, they just had me come out there and have a good time, and I thought, why not? I'll pull and see how I can do arm wrestling wise. You
got hurt, didn't you, though, in the WAL, and a lot of people that haven't seen you pull since that will sort of be wondering on the update how much pain have you got, how many problems have you got, if any, on that right arm, sort of pec shoulder area that you blew out.
The surgery went well. Overall, I got an infection in there which held everything up again for a while. But overall, that's been about a year and a half. Little over a year I've been pulling. I think I've pulled about a half dozen tournaments, and, I haven't pulled any of the serious dogs, but I'm undefeated on the right hand since I come back.
Good lad. Can't argue with that, mate. And you pulled some pretty solid competition, haven't you?
Upper class, yes. I pulled a lot of upper class guys, but not going after the elites of like the WAL or the PAL. So,
now we're gonna wind the clock back though, Ron. I know you've seen a couple of these before, and the idea is this is not going to be a one-shot deal with you, mate, because there is a hell of a lot to go through. You're not called Legend Ron Bath for nothing, mate. If John Brzezinski had never existed, there's a very strong argument that you're the best arm wrestler of all time. I mean, you're a man who's racked up wins in every possible event that you ever competed in, and you duck no one. And everybody I think one of the reasons you've got so much respect in the sport is because of that. You've always met everything head on, very complete arm wrestler, pulling all styles, and it's been nice to sort of follow your journey, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. We've had a massive number of requests and people saying, well, when's Ron Bath on? When's Ron Bath on? So I know there's a lot of people going to be tuning into this, mate. And we want to make this a little bit more in-depth than previous ones have been. And I'll tell you something. I had, don't know whether you've seen it, we had Richard Lupkus on here. So Richard came on a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling us about events from the 70s and so on. I think it was the second episode, he said, and this guy came up to me after the event and we were pulling a little bit, and you never guessed who that was. It was a young Mr. Ron Bath. And people won't know, a lot of people won't know because you're so current, mate, and because you're still competing and have been competing at that elite level in North America and globally, that you've been doing this quite a while, Ron. Quite a while. When did you actually start, mate?
It'll actually be 40 years this November. Yeah, 40 years ago in November, I pulled a small tournament in northern Wisconsin. Yeah,
40 years of pulling.
Yep.
That's awesome, though, isn't it?
Are you even that old?
Yes, mate. I know I don't look it. I know I don't look it. Yes, hide it well, but I'm a lot older than that. It's a goddamn shame. But I've been in this thing for about 33 years now.
Yeah.
So long period of time, unfortunately. But yeah, it's interesting to me that arm wrestling is one of those sports which is very much physical, very much material. You are dealing with however good your technique is, you're dealing with tendon, you're dealing with ligament, you're dealing with muscle, and yet guys like yourself, Rich, Norm Devio is another stellar example out there. Guys are still competing into the 60s, 70s. It's brilliant for that, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's definitely not a sport just for the young. You can compete. I think your strength styles change, as to what you do and your workouts. And there's different things that you do now when I'm older than I did when I was younger. But as far as staying competitive, I think if I trained to my full potential, I still think I could be at right up near the top. I don't train very hard.
Really?
Not as hard as people would think I do.
You're not Michael Todd then, are you? Going in there.
Michael Todd probably does as much one practice that I do in 1 month.
He grafts, doesn't he, Mike? Yeah. The man works hard, doesn't he? Really
my training's always been up and down. I'll get real dedicated for a month or so, and then, life will just take me a different direction, so I end up backing off. But I still focus on going to tournaments, and I'll still hit some practices. But I think as far as training continuously, I don't. And maybe that's what's kept my longevity. Maybe because those little breaks have always given me time to heal.
Are you doing that consciously, mate, or is it just weight of water? Because I know obviously you've had your own business for the majority of your career, worked very hard, you've got a family. Has it just been distractions, or have you felt things breaking up on your body and thought, no, I'm going to have to back this thing down?
Most of the time I think it was just life. Just because of stuff going on in my life, I would have to back off a little bit. But there's certain times that you feel things not right, you had to back off. I mean, I made the mistake when I went to Worlds. When was that? 98, when I tore my bicep.
So cute.
I heard it months earlier just playing around with Dave Randall. And that little pin inside my elbow stuck around until that day, and I got in a bad position and it tore. And after talking with the surgeon, he says it was probably 4 months early.
And that was, you were pulling Ibrahimov, weren't you there? Ibrahimov. Yeah. Mm. I remember that day well as well. Bloody awful. But, mate, let's take it back. So,
sure.
Sports, generally. I mean, you look like an athlete. You look like you've been playing sports all your life. Is that the case, or were you just genetically gifted? What was your start in sports?
I played sports, but not a whole lot. And really, through my young years, I wasn't very good at sports. I played football in my high school days. My senior year is when I really started to excel and understand the strengths I had. But other sports, I was sort of gagged with. I really wasn't talented in, but I found a love for arm wrestling. All the way from high school on, I could arm wrestle. But even back then, it wasn't the sports. It was a lot of the genetics. And my childhood and life always had everything to do with arm strength. I mean, my dad had decent, great-sized arms. He was a mason. So in the summertime, I did masonry work with him and the family. And then, I did some logging in between. And we had a small dairy farm, so you're messing around with milking cows. As I told somebody I was pulling cow titties when I was 13 years old, and you do that twice a day. I was playing with titties before you really could.
I've never milked a cow in my life, but I've known some men with strong hands and very thick glasses. Yeah. We'll say no more about it.
I think my younger days of high school led into arm wrestling, building strengths that I didn't know would be good for arm wrestling, but it turned out to be the better.
What was your first introduction or first recollection of an arm wrestling match, mate? Was it at school? Was it with members of your family or your dad?
We had some stuff going on in school, and I actually won for some FIAD class, I think it was, and I won, and there was nothing really for it. It was just playing around. I think it was probably on the bleachers. And even after that, like the summer after that and stuff, you'd go to the fairs, and if you heard somebody was good arm wrestling, they'd find Ron, and I'd go find, and most of the time I'd win. There was 1 or 2 guys in my young days that actually beat me in one of those events, but one was at the local state, but when I was about 20 years old, I lost that state to a guy, and God rest his soul. A guy by the name of Pat Switlick, and it's amazing how you can remember somebody's name over almost 40 years, and God rest his soul, he died in a car wreck shortly after that. But he was a beast of a young man. And then this Kyle Jernigan beat me just playing around one night at the bar. Pissed me off. I went outside and I jumped up and I smashed the bar sign I had to pay for.
So this is sort of for a dateline check. You're around 20 years old at this time.
Yeah. Yep. I was back early 80s, early 1980s.
Were you a big kid at school, Ron?
High school I was probably about as tall as I am now, 6'3".
Okay. Yes.
And I weighed about, but I was probably more like 190 or so. And then after that, I put on some good beer weight, and I got up to 220, 230. But it wasn't shaped the way it is now. But I was just, as I would call it, I was a strong country farm boy. I was country strong. I didn't know what weights were until probably 20 years ago.
So all your strength had been manual labouring, like you say, the forearm, things definitely. Of that nature. It's funny, we had so many guys have come into it like that. Obviously, Lupkus the same. When we had Rob Bidgent Jr. on, he was speaking about members of his family with similar situation, just grafters, Yeah, it's funny. It does seem to really lend itself to arm wrestling. Coming from that kind of background, a lot of mechanics and things like that have come up, and crossed over into it. It's funny. Eddie Hall, world's strongest man, diesel mechanic. Yep. That's what he came into, strength, just generally, because you're lifting stuff about, you're moving stuff about all the time, particularly upper body strength. I think you gravitate towards it. But were you always interested in strength, mate? Is it something you were fascinated by as a kid? Did you watch strength?
Stronger. I think part because I seen Gagley when I was younger, and I just always wanted to, I had a thing for being stronger. I just wanted to, I'd find the time to go do push-ups, or, when we were carrying block and stuff for my dad for masonry, I'd see how many I could carry, or how full we could fill the wheelbarrow to wheel it around to the back of the building. And
Mm-hmm.
We always did competitions to see who could get the most and the fastest. So it was
any
either
brothers
that
or sisters, mate?
What's that?
Any brothers or sisters? Any siblings?
Yeah, I have one sister in the middle with us, and then I have 6 brothers. And
6 brothers.
Yeah.
Whoa! And where are you in the mix? Are you oldest?
I'm right dead center. So I have 3 older than me, 1 passed away, and 3 younger.
Wow. And were they all strong lads? Were they all active lads when you were young, sort of similar, working on the farm? And
they were all. I think we all had our own strengths, but I don't think any of them went to develop it the way I did.
Okay.
I mean, the younger ones, because I arm wrestled, a couple of younger ones tried it, and they were naturally good at it, if they actually would have. But they flat out agreed on the first year or so that the pain to get to that next level was just more than they wanted to. But yeah, they still can hook up pretty good if they decided to.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And were you the alpha? Were you the big kid amongst your brothers, or were they bigger?
I got one taller. A couple of them are heavier, but I think in the all around I'm the biggest. You combine it all.
Frame.
So.
Yeah.
But then back to my siblings, my youngest brother, who still lives here in Georgia with me, he moved down here when he was like 18, 19, went to a practice. First practice he went to down here. I watched him and I should have paid more attention. And as I walked away from the table, I heard bang. Oh. And, he broke his arm, but he was pulling a guy a lot bigger than he was. And he actually was strong enough he could have, but he just got bad position. And he'll watch me do it, but he has no interest in arm wrestling again.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd sour the sport a little bit for you, mate. Has he made a full recovery? Has he got full mobility and everything?
Yeah, he's all good since then. I mean, he's worked with me for years, and now he works for another company. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it healed fully and complete. But that one ordeal was more than he cared. So you got to have a special love to go through a lot of the stuff of arm wrestling. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, without doubt. I mean, every time I had an operation, I used to think, what the am I doing? Here we go again. Another year recovery, and it's soul destroying. But if you love it that much, you do tend to muscle through, and you come back, and you can get over it. We've just seen it from Passmore, haven't we? Broke his arm, but he's back pulling again, and the guy's going to go on and he's going to last in the sport. If you've got the minerals to come back from something like that, then you're a stayer, without doubt.
Yeah, definitely. But what else?
So what about organised arm wrestling, Ron? When obviously you tried it out as a kid, as we all do, at the bar, across the bleachers, so on and so on. What was your first taste of arm wrestling competition? How did you come across that?
First competition was a local one at back 1980, November of 1980. There was a small little local one at a bar right near us. It was one of those where you got 3 in each weight class or so, but I was only 18 years old and I won it. And this little organization run by this Hanson up there in northern Wisconsin, I won most of his little tournament. And then I think I was 19 when they mentioned Chicago was having, and I can't remember what organization it was. And that's when I went down, and I'll back up to another story when I mention his name. And that's where I first met the likes of Johnny Walker, Burt Whitfield. And the funny part was I was 19 years old, and I never thought I was going to be if you would have told me when I was 19 that I'd be living in Johnny Walker or Burt Whitfield's backyard, I would have told you you're crazy because I'm not moving to Georgia. But to go back on Johnny Walker and back to my youth, I actually got introduced to arm wrestling on Wide World of Sports. And I think if I really look at it, that's when I probably knew I had an interest in arm wrestling, but didn't really understand it. Because Johnny Walker, I remember I was walking through the living room. My dad said, Ron, you got to see this, or whatever the conversation was. And they were doing a story on Johnny Walker and all his wins and stuff out in Petaluma and his little workout. And it was quite the show, and I was enthralled by it. So when I met Johnny Walker down in Chicago, I already knew who he was. I mean, he's the only guy in the sport I've ever seen. And there again, that's when if you would have told me then I was going to go arm wrestling in Johnny's house and stuff, I'd have said you're crazy. But 5 years later, not even 5 years later, I was training down here in Georgia without the inspiration of even coming down here. I had forgot those guys even lived down here. And then next thing I know, I was pulling with them.
Johnny Walker, for anybody who's a new fan of the sport of arm wrestling, in two names, and I'm going to say two names that you mentioned there. Johnny Walker, absolutely carved from the original arm wrestling cloth. That guy was just the man when he was in his prime. There's no question about it. It was phenomenal. Used to bully young John Brasink, bully everybody, to be perfectly honest. He was a remarkably gifted puller, super strong. Even when I sort of first watched a lot of Johnny's matches at the Yukon Jacks, sort of in the 90s, he was at the end of his career. You know, he was right at the end of his career, and I pulled Johnny on the practice table at the Yukon Jack in New York, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how strong he was. You know, and how his physicality was just not just mucking around on the practice table. And he pulled that day. I think he finished third. Did he finish that day? Maybe third, somewhere around there. But
that's for sure.
And he was in his 50s. The bloke was like, late 40s, 50s, strong as hell, even then. You know, so in his peak, I can't imagine that dude at 30.
Oh, he was quite the, I pulled him when he was in his prime, and he would just, I'll go back to another story of when I met him down in Chicago. All right. I knew who Johnny was, so I went down to Chicago, and Johnny, I forget where in the tournament, I had to pull him. And I hit Johnny, and I remember Johnny was looking up in the sky, and he didn't beat me right away. And we're just pulling, I'm pulling, and then Johnny just slowly pulled me to the pad. All right. The whole time all the ways home, I get home and I go to my dad. I remember telling my dad, I says, he asked how I did. I says, I forget what I took. I says, but I tell you what, Johnny Walker knew he had a match because he couldn't beat me right away because he was looking up. I was living down here for several years, and all of a sudden it dawned on me. I watched Johnny's style, and Johnny always had this style. He would grip up and he'd look up, and then he'd let the guy hit, and he'd hold him for a while, and then he'd pull him on down to the pad. And I was sitting at this tournament, I just started laughing because I remember that conversation with my dad. I'm like, he was just being a kind old man and let me have that moment of glory.
Are you still in touch with him, mate? Do you still see anything of Johnny Walker?
I don't stay in touch with him much, but we were really blessed last year. We had a tournament here in Georgia in Atlanta, and Adam Gerber got a hold of him, and Johnny showed up, and it was at the Congress Center here in Atlanta, and it was awesome to see. Johnny was there. Everybody, all the young guys, everybody was taking pictures with him all day long. They got him on the table, and he was pulling with some of these younger guys, and he had a smile beaming ear to ear the whole time he was there. He loved it, and the attention, he still loved it. But he was still hitting me.
I would love to get hold of that guy if you can get in touch with him. I'd love to get Johnny on the show. I would absolutely love to get Johnny on the show.
Yeah, that's possible. That's feasible.
See if you can put some feelers out, mate. If we can get hold of Johnny, I'd love to get him on here. I really would. Maybe get both of you.
Better at getting on Skype than I am.
Yeah, only take us 3 months. If we start planning it now, we should have him on by like next year.
There you go.
No, I said two names, mate. The other guy you mentioned there, special place in my heart, Burt Whitfield.
Yep.
Mate, what a bloke. What an hombre. I absolutely love Burt Whitfield. Yep. Underrated arm wrestler, flies under the radar. Not many people talk about him these days. A lot of people won't know of Burt Whitfield. What an absolute gentleman that was. Fabulous bloke. Yep. The day I won my first world title, I was sat next to Burt in the front row of the crowd, and I was like a little bit like, holy shit, Burt Whitfield. Like, you know, and I didn't know I could go up and talk to him, like sat down next to him and started talking to him. I couldn't believe how open, friendly, what a top guy. What an absolutely lovely guy. What a shame, obviously, that he's no longer with us. But mega pull. Deserves more attention. Deserves more notoriety, in my opinion. So, how did you come across Burt? What was the situation there?
Burt, like you said, Burt forgot more about arm wrestling than any of us really know. Burt was so far ahead of himself as far as working angles and hand position. I could not have been blessed any more than to have Burt as my coach, my mentor. How I got to know Burt was I moved down here in 1985 and, I saw this small little tournament. It was called Gold Rush Days in North Georgia. Well, I'm this cocky little guy from North Wisconsin. I was a badass up there arm wrestling. So I go up there and I sign up for like 5 different classes, 3 right, 2 left, whatever. I mean, it was only $5. And all of a sudden they mention all the world champions. And I go up, I try to get my money back, but oh well, I didn't. First match of the day, cause how they break the brackets up, and I do it today, is you go up above, up in the room after everybody signs up, and it's a small local tournament, so you try to make sure teammates don't pull teammates initially and stuff. Well, per Burt's conversation, he was up in the room and they're trying to break up the teammates and stuff. And they asked who this Ron Bath was. And Burt goes, I don't know, he's some big young boy out there that I saw. And they said, well, who should we give him? Burt goes, I'll take him. Burt weighs like 170 plus pounds maybe. And I was about 210. And, so we get up there and he's our first match of the day, Ron Bath, Burt Whitfield. And I'm like, oh shit. And I look at this guy, I'm like, oh, this little guy. So we get the pulling and I hit, he's holding me, and I'm looking at the family, I'm looking at my friends, because I'm bragging my ass up. I'm going to this little tournament and I'm going to clean house. And this guy is holding me forever. Finally, he lets me get into a deep hook. And, I tricep down and I just push him down and I get the win. But I was toast after that. Right after that, Dave Randall was just coming along. He was impressed I beat Burt because he said nobody beat Burt. So Dave was as fast as anything, and Dave Randall just smashed me to the pad. So after that, I talked to Burt. He invites me to his club, and I go to his club, and I'll bet any money it was 4 months before Burt let me get a win on him. He beat me every way possible to prove that you're not that good.
That's great. That's a lovely story.
Burt was an awesome coach. He would watch two guys arm wrestle, and then he'd whisper something to the other guy's ear on where to put their fingers and hand, and they would win, and he would tell, Burt was a talent. Burt was a great coach.
Yeah, he really was. He was a fabulous arm wrestler and a lovely bloke. It's a great shame that guys of that ability and that much love for the sport don't necessarily get the notoriety. And there's many of them out there, but Burt was a special man. He was mega. A lot of
the lack of social media in those days when we didn't have it, all you had was your paper little magazine, your armbender, and that's all anybody got. So the world didn't get to see some of these guys. And so it's great when we have shows like this and their names get mentioned, and then the young guys can hear about some of the guys that actually helped the sport grow to what it is today.
It was one of the first guys I got my picture taken with when I won the Worlds. I was walking back to my now wife, then girlfriend, and I just walked off the stage, and as I walked past him, he went, "Hey, congratulations, Neil, world champion. How's that feel?" And I was absolutely over the moon. I was buzzing, I said, "Hey, can I get a picture with you real quick?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I went over there with my medal, got the shot. Special times. Yeah. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. But, mega. Burt Whitfield, what a guy. Honourable mention, 100% deserved. And the fact that somebody like yourself came from that club, from that organisation, and from his tutelage that says a great deal, doesn't it? Says a great deal.
I think sometimes, if you look back on the history of, as you grow over 40 years, I think if I look at all the activities that happened to me in the arm wrestling world, it almost had me destined to get to an elite status. I could have stayed in Wisconsin where I probably never would have met the likes of Burt Whitfield, Johnny Walker. I just would have been some local hack who just hooked in and stuff. And they got some great clubs in Wisconsin today. I mean, they got some awesome arm wrestlers up there now, but back when I was younger, it wasn't that same way, not like it was in Georgia. So for me to move to Georgia out of just mere coincidence for a job to a family friend, and then to end up in their backyard and be able to train with them, that just helped escalate my abilities in the sport to where they ended up, to, I guess, being called a so-called legend.
Well, iron sharpens iron, as we all know, and often when you look at a lot of the top arm wrestlers in the world, you see these pockets of excellence. You'll get a very good puller in one area, and then there's two, and then there's three, and you get this little elite collective. Might only be small, but then they're the real force because of that enthusiasm, and as I say, training together, the level goes up and up, and fascinating stuff, mate. What was your sort of natural leaning from a technical perspective, Ron? Where did you, because obviously we've seen you have massive success and do very well in all styles of arm wrestling, from top roll to the dead wrist press. I've not seen you throw a King's move yet, but it wouldn't surprise me.
No, you're not going to see a King's move. If you want to call locking out in the back and if trying to top roll and getting stalled out is a King's move, well then I guess I do it. Mm-hmm. But no, you won't see me under the table because my generation, that was banned. I mean, that just wasn't, slipping. I looked at my worlds and I wouldn't slip because slipping wasn't something we were taught younger on. Now slipping's becoming the norm of a practice and trying to slip. My first, I just was a hooker. I just hook and press. And when I moved to Georgia, I was a hook and press. Dave Randall was a top roller.
Yep.
Well, Burt Whitfield, and I take that to training today. Burt was one, he would tell Dave, you got to learn the hook. Ron, you got to learn the top roll. So we would practice all those different angles. And I use that, what Burt taught me then, to teach my guys today. And I break it down a little more. I tell them work 70% of your weakness at a practice, only work 30% of your strength during most of it. If you want to get to elite status, you got to be able to do all of it.
Yes.
And you're not going to do it. Because normally all arm wrestlers, a lot of your young guys only want to work what they're good at. So, and they don't necessarily train, if they're going to go to a practice and get beat, they don't do it. And hey, if you're going to practice only to win, you're never going to get to that next level.
Mm-hmm. So when was the first sort of taste of success, Ron? Real success? When was you? Obviously, you say you're doing very well at this point in time. And how old were you then when you got that success? Sort of what age were you, and where did you first encounter a real notable win?
23. I moved here to Georgia when I started working out with Burt and Johnny, and because I always wanted to keep my weight down, I found myself always pulling in Johnny's class. Well, you know where that's going to land you in the 80s. Second place. Mm-hmm. I actually won nationals, I think, in 88, 87. So it only took me 3 years to win a national title. And damn, you're talking, when it comes to worlds and that, oh man, those were a ways off. Well, we used to pull out there in Vegas in the early 90s.
Yeah. Was that like at Tony Celeste gigs that you'd power off? I remember seeing you and John Brezink pull there, and you beat Johnny in one event there, which God, what the frig was the event? I can't remember the event. I was at that show. John let Bill through.
Yep.
And you were pissed off.
Yeah.
Like, really angry. And you beat them both. I remember that on the day. And you were angry that day.
They pissed me off. Because Tony Celeste doesn't really have a bracket. He just calls names. And John was undefeated. I had already lost to John, I believe, once. I had one loss. Bill had a loss.
Right. Yeah, you lost to John and you let Bill through.
John had to pull Bill. And so John took the loss to Bill, figuring that would set me and John up. But then he brought all three of us up and had us draw straws. And John and Bill lost, so they had to pull each other. And I remember pimping them. Well, damn, I wonder who's going to win this match. Well, you knew who was going to win it. John's going to win it. But I was so freaking pissed off, boy, when John let me get in behind on that hook. Holy shit, man. I was pushing with everything I had. And
you unloaded.
I remember John's comment during his interview. The only part of the comments I remember is he thinks he let me get he got me a little too mad. So
your whole body was vibrating with the effort you were putting into that pull. I was like, what the? Oh, that was good. That was some match.
my true success was already coming in the later 80s, but mostly in the early 90s. I was seeing that I was, I was within John's reach if I wanted to. If John focused 100%, John would always win, but John had to be 100%, and then I could get some wins, and I managed to get a few over John over the years.
What were your other, aside from John, which is obviously the one, who were your other sort of most notable or special wins for you at that time? Which wins mattered most?
Beating Johnny Walker the first time was definitely a big win. And I remember that one. I was up in Tennessee. That was probably the later 80s, maybe early 90s. And I was only in the sport on the pro level probably 4 or 5 years. I was a small tournament in Tennessee. I beat Johnny Walker. The thing is, I took second place because John Brezink had nothing to do that weekend or whatever happened. And John Brezink ended up showing up, and I took second to John. And damn, that sort of put soured that big win over Walker. But anytime I could get a win on Johnny was a big win because I had so much respect for the man. And then I got some wins on Clay Rosencrantz.
Big name back then.
Oh, anything that was there. I got wins on Cleve Dean, but I think Cleve was well out of his prime by the time I was getting there. But still, getting a win on Cleve Dean was always good. That was later in the years. That was the late 90s, later 90s when I got. And getting my wins on Dave Randall, the likes of Dave. And
where did Dave go? How did Dave go?
Dave just he started with working with a club, and he just sort of got out of arm wrestling. He'll still play around, but he had that super match with Dave or with Devin Lorette. Yeah. And honestly, I think if Dave would have been training, Dave would have beat him. But he said he hurt so bad he had enough of arm wrestling. So
it smashed him up a bit, did it?
Yeah, if you don't practice and play for a while and you're still physically strong, your joints ain't ready for it. You're going to be sore for a while.
Yeah, and he's a massive bench presser as well. A very strong man generally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a shame, really. Did you pull over the top, Ron?
Did I pull over the top? Yeah. Over the top, I qualified here in Atlanta. That would have been like 86, 85, 86 I qualified. And I went out there, out to the finals. I took 8th place. That's what I tell everybody. I took 8th place at over the top. I never made TV, but since that day, within a few years after that, I beat everybody who beat me at that tournament. So if over the top would have been a few years later, it would have been good for me.
Who put you out?
Oh man, that's a long time ago. I really couldn't even tell you who put me out. Might have been the likes of Gerald Dees. There was Gerald Dees. Gary Ray was out there at that time. I don't, honestly, in all fairness, I don't remember too many of them. I remember a couple of wins that I get over John, but not the losses.
Fair, hey. Nothing wrong with that bit of strategy, mate.
Over 40 years, you pull a lot of matches, and I love pulling. I don't care who it is I'm pulling against, win or lose. I just love to pull so much that the other stuff is just informal to me. I just want to pull.
Fair enough.
Love it.
Well, it's seen you right, hasn't it? You're still here and you're still banging away. And very few men can say they've got any wins or done anything with you. What I wanted to ask you as well, who were sort of your inspirations in arm wrestling back in the day? Who were the guys? Obviously, I'm sure Johnny's there. Were there other guys that you sort of looked up to? Were there other guys that you aspired to be like or were impressed with be it style, be it power? Who was your sort of aspirational arm wrestlers?
Back in the day, back in those days, you didn't travel a whole lot. And like I said, without the social media, all you had was the Armbender little magazines. As far as seeing other people besides your locals, it really didn't see much. But hands down, Johnny Walker was the one I wanted to epitomize. I think I've always was a quiet guy at the table. I never really liked making a whole lot of noise. And I think that's to epitomize that over with Johnny, because Johnny never said anything at the table. Every once in a while, depending who I'm pulling, I'll get a little vocal at the table and become a little rasher. And I think that just come with time. But in the day, it was all Johnny just wanted to be strong like the man. I wanted to pull his style. And the guy was definitely my main and only real inspiration.
And what about modern times, mate? What about the guys nearer than now? Are there any up-and-comers or people that are on the circuit now that you sort of see coming up who really impresses you?
But Paul Passamore definitely impresses me. Mainly, I don't know where he'll end up as far as how high into the status he gets, but his fight, his bulldog spirit is just tremendous. The guy, he is. He's like a bulldog when he gets up there. Well, I pulled him left-handed. This Brez, who hangs out with and works out with Boston, left-handed. Well, that's a man and a half in a 170-pound body.
I mean, I'm going to say Brez is past his prime as well. When he was winning his W.A.F titles, particularly that left arm.
Yep.
Iron. Absolutely iron.
What impresses me about those guys is the fight they have. And I think it reminds me of a lot of the fight I had in my earlier days. But I still don't think I had. When Brez was pulling me out here in Nevada, you could just see once he smelled blood, you could just see it in his face, and I knew I was toast. I'm sort of glad because even 3 weeks later, my left's screwed.
The funny thing is, though, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you were arm wrestling in a mirror, but just not you now. But if you wind the clock back to the early days, I've seen you in some stupid matches, and there wasn't a backward step. Maybe now there is because you're a different man, but you've served your time there.
A big difference is, and I think Brez is there, the likes of Paul Passamore are there. I name the ones that are real common to me the most as of late. Is the fact they go into a match and they have the attitude. Michael Todd's the same way. I will not lose. Mike impresses. Mike was really impressing me last year at Wall because he was doing the King's move, but he was staying way above the table.
Yep.
And the only incidents I had with Mike was his last match, when all the little ruckus broke out between him and we can talk about that later. But the demeanorism those guys have on the I will not lose attitude. I'll do all it takes to win. Devin's the same way. But some of these guys like Brad and Paul, you can see it in their face. And even Mike, it's like, I'm here, I'm not. And you can see every ounce of war is coming out on them right then and there. And I used to have that. Now it's just, I'm here to have fun. And, after my match with Todd and I tore that pec, now it's like, this is hurting pretty bad. I think I'll save it.
Yeah, you don't want to be going down that road too many times because you end up with permanent issues, don't you? It gets silly. Yeah. And for a guy like yourself who's won everything there is to win, usually in multiple times, you got to question why tear yourself to bits. You don't want yourself to look like a patchwork quilt and be unable to sort of wash your own hair in the morning. Not great.
No, if it's feeling good, I'll pull hard. If I get in bad position, it's not worth it. I've done everything I want to do. I just love to pull and compete. And, most of my competitions on the right side are very competitive lately, and I'm right in there. And I don't think there's anything I can't do right-handed. Honestly, if I train the left, I let that left heel. I think I'll do well, which I got to get ready. I got to pull Mike Gould coming up in November, right and left.
Yes, you do. Yeah, another absolute warrior, Gould.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. That's a great match on paper, isn't it? I love Mike as well. He's another great guy, isn't he? You and him are so similar.
The war. I'll tell him right here in this show, I'm bringing the war face. I'm bringing it. I love Mike to death, but no, I'm not going to let him beat me.
That'll be a good one, mate. I'm looking forward to that a lot.
When she wrote and asked me who I wanted, and she brought Mike's name, I said, heck yes, I love Mike to death as a brother. I said, yeah, we're going to go down one more time. So,
get in.
But he's looking good in his practices. He's looking thick too.
Yeah, Mike's one of those guys. When he's inspired, when he decides to have a bit of a run at it, he's serious. He's no joke. He's no joke.
It'll be it's going to be fun, and it's going to be a war. So.
And it's funny you should say that. You're inspired by the guys that get into the long screaming career enders, because you made your living out of that. But some of your more famous ones were sort of under the radar, and you had to be at the event live. And one that a lot of people won't know, that you don't get credit for, and I'm gonna bust this one out to close down this first episode, right? The famous 2004 Lottie Tour, when the Pulling John movie was being filmed. Yeah. So there's a very, very famous bit of footage in that film with John pulling Ivakin Taras of Ukraine, and he stops him in the dead wrist press, pulls him up to the center in a titanic battle, and presses him through to the pad. Now then, what people won't know is, literally less than 5 minutes before, you did that same thing to a fresh Taras. Yep. That's what actually happened on the day. That's what actually happened. The real match, the real screaming career ender, was actually you and Taras 5 minutes before the John and Taras match took place. And John, being John, knew exactly where he was going to go, exactly what he was going to do, and he emulated that same and kept Ivakin on that same spot, so to burn it up. And that sort of submissive shake of the head that you see from Taras in the match is because there's just nothing left there. Yeah. He left it all on the table with you, and that was a dramatic match. It never got shown in the film, you know.
Friend that's going to look for it and make sure it gets out there. I was telling her about it, and she goes, "It's got to get." Because John told me right after, he goes, after I saw you do that, I figured I can do that. And he gave me credit on the side, that he got the idea from me. But you don't see John do that wrist broke back, that move much or anything at all. But Taras was so powerful with that top. I mean, I think I stopped him like that far from the freaking pad.
Yeah.
It was close. Wow.
Yeah, it was a dramatic match. It was mega. That was one of my favourite matches. It was an absolute. Do you know, Ron, you were involved in my favourite arm wrestling match of all time? You know that? No.
Which one?
The most grueling, unbelievable, intense arm wrestling match, in my opinion, of all time, was yourself and Yoshinobu Kanai in Armwrestlers. Holy shit!
Yep.
That match. That was something else. Everybody that was there, and we're talking Marcio Barboza, Michael Todd, Frodo Hoagland, guys who were known for being in script, they were all like, God damn, that's the match. That was the most ridiculous match I've ever seen.
Yep. And in round three, when he got his win, I actually tore some UCL. I had 3 or 4 pops in my elbow. And I thought about getting out, and then I said, no. Maybe that was the last war phase I had, but I wasn't going to lose. I didn't want to lose.
What a match!
Yeah, that was fun. I was toast. I mean, that ranks right there with the Michael Todd match at UAL. Yeah, I've been in some wars that beat them out of me.
You have, mate. You have been. I mean, your original match that was filmed by Devon's sister, and that's a superb. Devon should release that because his sister filmed. She's a very artistic lass. His sister's like a talented lady, and she put together a film in black and white. It's beautifully shot.
I watched it many times.
What a match that was!
Yeah,
that was another one.
See, when we get talking about this, I've done it so long, we get talking, then it starts to mutate into more matches. That match with Devon, and I don't know, to go on that from Yoshi, that match with Devon, all I heard before this is how great shape and how Devon's endurance is sky high. All right. And I had no teammates to play. I was before all these other teammates were here with me. I was training by myself. You know how that goes. 2 or 3 pulls, and it's like, that's enough. Mm-hmm. And I get up there to Canada, and we have that first match is a war, and I'm looking at Travis, and I'm feeling like death already. Round 1, I'm feeling like hell, and I'm picturing Devon over there behind me doing jumping jacks and all this stuff. And so we finished the war, and I watched that video. After round 1, Devon was sitting in the corner with his head between his legs already at round 1. So I felt good that at least I kicked his ass physically in round 1. But, Devin's given me some hell of a matches, too. And Yoshi and Mike and Marcio.
Maybe some absolute death wars. But that match with Yoshi Kanai, mate, somebody needs to show me a better arm wrestling match than that. 6 rounds of...
I was all 6. Yep.
Unreal.
Yep.
I was hurt. I only watched it.
I appreciate you for fighting me over there.
Mate, that was good times, wasn't it? Oh my God, it really was.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're at 50 minutes, and I'm gonna go get some sleep, and I'm gonna let Ron do his thing. But this is far from over. This is just part 1 of the Ron Bath story. So we'll be back on here with Ron very, very soon. There's light at the end of this tunnel because now we've got this Skype thing worked out.
Now you got my mind going, so I'll start writing notes of all the more other memorable matches. Oh, we got a lot of them. 40 years.
That is exactly what we want you to do. Exactly that. Go on with those stories, Ron Bath. We just talked about. Yeah, we're gonna go into matches. We're gonna go into characters. We're gonna get opinions on people. There's a lot of things to run in Ron Bath. Legend Ron Bath finally on the show. A lot of people are going to be interested in seeing this. And one more thing that I want to do here as well, just to give everybody a dateline check, not to sort of bring the mood down, but I wanted to get somebody on here that was of the highest possible status to do this. I want to dedicate this show and this series with Ron to the memory of Donovan Williams, one of the arm wrestling community's friendliest, most humble, lovely people. Jody Williams and his family lost their young son, 14-year-old son, in absolutely tragic circumstances, which is an unimaginable loss. And I just wanted to make sure that we dedicated something befitting to that young man's life, and I can't think of anybody more so than yourself, Ron.
Well, as a father of three young boys, well, not no more, they're older, but as a father of 3 boys, I really appreciate, and my heart felt for the Williams family. I could not imagine one of my boys leaving before me, and Jody, my heart breaks, and I'm glad we're dedicating this show to that family. And to Donovan.
Absolutely. On behalf of all of us here at the Supernatural Strength Channel, I want to say thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If it's your first visit here to the channel, please make sure you like, share, subscribe. Make sure you come back on here. We'll be back with Ron very, very soon. We'll jump on here next week or when he's next available to do the second one of those. And as I say, this is in the memory of Donovan Williams, R.I.P., young man.